So you're trying to manage a complex AI initiative. You've probably heard of Agile, you've heard of Waterfall, but what if I told you that picking just one is often a recipe for disaster? The real secret sauce, the key to success, is creating a custom hybrid approach that fits your organization perfectly. Okay, let's dive into exactly how to do that. Now, just so you know where we're coming from, this explainer is based on Chapter 12 of a really comprehensive course on AI project management. We're zeroing in on a specific chapter because, honestly, it tackles the most critical, real-world challenge. How do you build a hybrid methodology that actually gets the job done? All right, here's our game plan. We'll start by talking about why pure methodologies just don't cut it for AI. Then we'll look at some popular hybrid combos you can use. We'll walk through a real-world case study, give you a 5-step framework for designing your own approach, and wrap up by helping you dodge some common, painful mistakes. So, let's get right to the heart of the matter. This idea that you can just grab a textbook methodology off the shelf and have it magically work for your AI project, well, it's pretty much a myth. And this is a question every single manager needs to ask themselves. Seriously, is the process you've put in place actually helping your team succeed? Or is it just a bunch of red tape that's slowing them down and causing frustration? Because here's the reality check. Big AI projects don't exist in a perfect little bubble. You've got to deal with layers of organizational complexity, pre-existing processes that you can't just ignore, and, of course, all sorts of regulatory hurdles. A pure agile or pure waterfall approach is just too rigid to handle all of that. So, if one size doesn't fit all, what's the answer? It's all about building your own custom toolkit. You get to pick and choose the best parts of different methodologies to create something that's just right for you. Let's look at a couple of popular ways to do this. First up, we have a pattern you'll see a lot in larger, more established companies. It's sometimes called water scrum fall. Think of it like a sandwich. You have the traditional, structured stuff as the bread on the outside, with a flexible, agile core in the middle. So what does that actually look like in practice? Well, you start with the water part. That's upfront planning and defining your requirements. Then, in the middle, your development team gets to work its magic using Scrum, building and iterating in short cycles. And finally, you wrap it up with the fall part, formal, structured testing and deployment, with big checkpoints for management to sign off. It's the best of both worlds, really. So, who is this for? It is the perfect match for those big organizations that absolutely need formal governance, to keep the auditors and executives happy. But they also want to give their tech teams the freedom and flexibility to actually innovate. Okay, on to our next popular blend. This one's called Scrum Ban. And yeah, the name pretty much gives it away. It's a mashup of Scrum and Kanban, designed for a totally different kind of challenge. With Scrum Ban, you're basically cherry picking. You keep the really useful ceremonies from Scrum, like planning your sprints and doing retrospectives to learn and improve, but you borrow the visual workflow and the idea of continuous flow from Kanban. And probably the most important part is the idea of WIP, or work in progress limits. It just means the team can't start a million things at once, forcing them to finish what they've started. This makes Scrumban an absolute lifesaver for teams that are constantly juggling. Think about an AI operations team. They've got their planned projects, sure, but they also have to deal with unexpected emergencies and production issues that pop up. Scrumban gives them the structure to plan ahead, but the flexibility to react when things go sideways. All right, enough theory. Let's see how this stuff plays out in the wild. We're going to look at a case study from a big financial services company that built a really clever, multi-layered hybrid model for their entire AI platform. Okay, so at the very top, the 30,000-foot view, they used a methodology called Prince2 for governance. This gave the executives the oversight they needed. They had a formal steering committee, big stage gate reviews for major decisions, and a constant focus on making sure the whole program was still a good business investment. Then you zoom in a level to the individual projects. And this is where the agility happened. Each AI project team was running on Scrum. We're talking 2-week sprints, product owners coming straight from the business side to keep things on track, and small, cross-functional teams that could move super fast. And finally, you get down to the operations level, the folks on the front lines keeping everything running. They used Kanban. All incoming incidents and support tickets went onto a visual board. Those WIP limits we talked about kept them from getting swamped. And they even had a special expedite lane, like a fast pass, for critical issues that had to be fixed right now. So seeing that example, you're probably thinking, wow, that's pretty smart.
How do I build something like that for my team? Well, the key isn't to just copy-paste their model. It's about designing your own. And here's a simple 5-step framework to help you do it. First, you have to assess your context. What's your company culture like? What are your team's skills? Any regulations you have to follow? Second, figure out your non-negotiables, the absolute must-have elements, like certain approval steps. Third, pick the methodologies that have the strengths you need. Fourth, and this is crucial, define exactly how these different parts will talk to each other. And finally, don't try to boil the ocean. Pilot your new process on a small scale, get feedback, and then refine it. It's all about learning and adapting.
Now, before you rush off to design your masterpiece, a quick word of warning. Building a hybrid model is incredibly powerful, but it's also really easy to mess up if you're not careful. Let's talk about a couple of common traps. The first big pitfall is something called agile in name only. This is when a company says they're agile. Maybe they even have daily stand-up meetings. But underneath it all, nothing has changed. The mindset is still totally rigid and top-down. They're just going through the motions. So how do you fix this? You have to look past the ceremonies and genuinely embrace the core principles of agile. It's about a real commitment to iterating, to actually listening to feedback, and to being willing to change your plan based on what you learn. It's a mindset shift, not just a new meeting on the calendar. And here's another huge one, governance theater. This is when you create endless layers of review meetings and approval forms that make everyone feel busy and important, but they don't actually lead to better decisions. It's the illusion of control, but in reality, it's just bureaucracy getting in the way. The solution here is to be absolutely ruthless about value. Ask yourself, does this meeting, does this document actually help someone make a smarter decision? If the answer is no, if it's just a rubber stamping exercise, get rid of it. You want meaningful oversight, not a bureaucratic stage play. And that really brings us to the final, most important point. Your process should never be finished. It's a living thing that has to evolve. So the question I want to leave you with is this. Looking at how your team works right now, what's the one small, safe-to-fail experiment you could try next week to make things just a tiny bit better?